Hey, welcome to the third webinar of the Climate Resilient South Fraser Businesses program, everyone. This webinar series is being delivered by BC Green Business in partnership with Community Futures South Fraser. And the topic for today's webinar is taking action in your business. But before we delve into the webinar, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you all today from the traditional and unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. Today, we recognize this land is of the Esquimalt and Songhees Nation. We will also be sharing a link to the First Peoples map of BC in the chat. It's an interactive map of Indigenous languages, arts, and heritage. So yeah, take some time to check it out. And a bit about myself here. My name is Deep Chahal, and I am a Green Business Associate and Project Manager with Synergy Foundation. And yeah, this is me from back in COVID days when everyone had longer hair. Okay, right. So it can be difficult getting started. So hopefully we can leave you with a few key takeaways with today's webinar to get you going on your sustainability plan. Um, yeah, as I mentioned, today we'll be speaking on taking action in your business. So actionable changes that you can make in your business to not only be more eco-friendly, but also save on operational costs in the long run. This is the last webinar of the series, so we really hope you enjoyed the first two webinars and we hope you learned something new today as well. Okay, so moving on to the main agenda for today's webinar. We've broken it down into 5 segments. So we'll start with a brief intro to BC Green Business. We'll cover the topic of sustainable packaging and shipping and what that means, exploring some big energy draws for an average small business and ways to be more efficient. And finally, we'll have Melanie and I think Andrew from Locality Brewing to join us to talk about their sustainability journey. Right, so a bit about BC Green Business. We are a nonprofit environmental certification program, and we work one-on-one with businesses to find different ways to enhance their environmental and social performance. And yeah, here's a quick overview of how the program works. You connect with us via email or through our Become a Member page. We'll find a time that works for you, conduct an in-person site visit, and provide a custom suggested actions list. And once businesses have the time to go over the checklist, make any improvements, they get back to us. We finalize the score and send them their certificate, physical, digital decals, and also promote their achievements on our social media platforms and connect them with a network of like-minded businesses. So if the program sounds interesting, we would we have and if you would like one of our verifiers to come conduct a site visit, we have 15 fully funded certifications available in for businesses in Chilliwack and Abbotsford region. I believe some of them have already been booked. So yeah, we'll also share a link to our Become a Member form in the chat. Yeah, so if you are interested, send us a message. And we will also be in the area on November 21st to attend the Involve Abbotsford Symposium. Yeah, we'll be there to conduct an in-person workshop. So we'll be happy to see you there as well. Hey, so to begin with, the main question is why make the effort? Why transition to sustainability? Um, and when it comes to incorporating sustainable practices into your business, every owner and operator has their own motivation, but there are a few inherent benefits that come when you do decide to transition to sustainable practices. So a Canadian online shopper study found that when shopping online, 71% of Canadians look for brands that provide more sustainable solutions. So, you have that edge in consumer preference. There's long-term economic gains, whether it be from resource conservation, from system efficiencies, or just an increased brand appeal. Um, you stay ahead of the curve. There's various regulations that have already been passed, and there are more to come, like the Canada-wide action plan on zero plastic waste. And one of the items on that agenda is for all plastic packaging in Canada to contain at least 50% recycled content by 2030. So, by choosing sustainability, you can research your options, incorporate them now, stay ahead of the curve, and yeah, so that making change now so that you're not rushed when different policies are in place, and you can make a choice that makes sense for your bottom line now. Okay, sustainable shipping and packaging. What is sustainable packaging? So it can be defined as packaging practices that aim to reduce environmental impact and ecological footprint. So when we talk about environmental impact, it can be measured in terms of carbon emissions associated with extracting the resources, creating materials, transportation, and the waste that ends up in our landfill and our waterways. Um, yeah, so currently plastic packaging makes up half of all plastic waste, but less than 9% of it is being recycled globally, and the remaining of it is either being landfilled, incinerated, or littered. And you might ask, why is the recycling rate so low? And there's various reasons for it, but one of the biggest factors being that plastic packaging can be composed of many different kinds of materials, and the most problematic one being flexible plastic packaging, or FPP. So these are your plastic bags, your wrappers, and most municipal recycling facilities are not equipped to handle those flexible plastics. As well as oftentimes plastic packaging is made of multiple different layers. For example, if you get a box of cookies, sometimes there's hard plastic on top and a thin layer of overwrap, and just using different types of plastic in one kind of packaging just further complicates the recycling process. So here are four key considerations when evaluating your packaging options. We will delve into each one of them and hopefully inspire some ideas for everyone's packaging troubles. First one being reducing material usage. It's as simple as it sounds just like eliminating any packaging that is not required, selecting the right material. So finding the most eco-friendly option that works for your business and your product, reevaluating your current design. So, just taking a step back, asking yourself, is this the most efficient use of resources, money, and space, or can it be improved? And then incorporating circular economy principles. Finally, we'll um, explore some basic circular economy principles and see how that can be applied to packaging as well. So, reducing material usage, eliminate secondary or tertiary packaging. So that secondary or tertiary packaging, for example, is plastic overwrap. And that's something that is just an excess. So it's packaging that is not necessary, and eliminating it would not only decrease the cost of packaging, but also helps you align with eco-friendly practices, um, and reduce the recycling burden on customers and municipalities, and also ensuring that you have the right size. So ensure there's no negative space in the packaging of your product, as it reduces, efficient space use in trucks, for example. It also increases the weight. You might have to purchase different cushioning materials, and all that leads to an increased cost of shipping. And reducing material is one of the easiest and most approachable steps towards sustainable packaging and reducing operational costs. And with incorporating all these changes, you can create a story and share that with your customers to cultivate an eco-friendly brand identity. And moving on to selecting the right material. So the first one, as we talked about it earlier, being moving away from soft plastic packaging, as it's not easily recyclable. And also biodegradable materials. So biodegradable plastics can often be hailed as like the eco-friendly alternative, but they do have a few drawbacks, which does not make them the perfect solution for packaging. The first being limited biodegradability. They can persist in the soil for centuries. There's also recycling challenges. So if you have a bioplastic and it contaminates a different type of plastics, for example, PET or plastic number one, then the entire batch is generally rejected and sent to the landfill instead of being recycled. And composting them is a challenge because they need specific conditions to break down. And they're also resource intensive. So if everyone was to switch to bioplastic, we would require vast amounts of farmland to grow the necessary plant-based materials. And here I would also like to make a distinction between biodegradable and compostable. Biodegradable is something that breaks down over an undefined period when exposed to environmental conditions, whereas when something is marketed as compostable, it is specifically designed to break down quickly and completely in a controlled composting environment. And here we've created this hierarchy of sustainable packaging solutions. So right at the top being elimination and reduction, which are by far the easiest and the best strategy that, as we've already discussed. Um, then followed by creating a system where the packaging can be reused or refilled, or could be used as a refillable vessel. This type of model is gaining a lot of popularity within BC, especially for refilleries where customers get an incentive for bringing their own containers. Or if you go to the grocery store, there's Avalon Milk, um, which is the same model. You return your milk bottle to get a small deposit back. Using recycled content is the next best option since it bypasses the emissions that are associated with creating a new packaging, like the extraction resources. And not only is it fewer emissions compared to a, a, a virgin plastic, but it also is the next best option. Um, And if the only option for you is to be using plastic, then ensuring that the type of plastic that you're using is easily recyclable. Within BC, there's plastics one, two, and five, which are easily recyclable. So choosing the ones based on the region that you're based in. And finally, substitution would be making use of materials other than traditional packaging materials or plastics. So sugarcane bagasse, for example, is being used as a byproduct of sugarcane processing and is being used recently as a base material for packaging. So looking into creative solutions as well. And then packaging design. So this slide combines and builds on the principles of reducing material use and selecting the right material that we just talked about. So um, finding materials or design which allow for more than one use, and then selecting sustainable materials such as either naturally compostable materials, recycled paper, or plastic products. Materials that can be recycled, such as aluminum, glass, or plastics one, two, and five. And then choosing lighter weight materials to reduce the cost of shippings and emissions. Uh, Finally, we have customer appeal. So, using your packaging as a way to storytell and share information about the sustainable initiatives that you're a part of. And cost and production efficiencies by standardized packaging. So standardizing your packaging would look like using the same size packages or bulk options instead of small sized packaging options. For example, if someone is purchasing 5 of the same items, you can package them together instead of having them all packaged separately. I'm seeing some questions in the chat. Oh, no worries. Right. All right, circular economy principle. So what is circular economy? It is an economic system based on the reuse and regeneration of materials or products. And we delved into circular economy for our first webinar, but here we'll talk about 3 circular economy principles and how they can be applied to in packaging. So the first principle of circular economy is to design products and systems in a way that eliminates waste and pollution from the outset. This involves rethinking product design, material selection, and manufacturing processes to optimize resource use and minimize environmental impact. So when rethinking product design, thinking of refillable materials, and when making material selection, choosing recycled materials instead of virgin materials. And achieving a circular economy requires collaboration across the entire value chain. So be it businesses, governments, and consumers, and finding ways to incentivize the reuse or recycling or even return of packaging is another principle that should be incorporated into your packaging practices. And finally, developing a loop back system or a closed loop recycling that is focused on supply chain sustainability. So closed loop systems are developed so that all of the materials in manufactured goods can be recycled, usually for the use in the same type of product. For closed loop recycling, the manufacturing process is usually designed with recycling in mind. For example, you're creating a product and choosing a design, for example, if you're serving a beverage, choosing aluminum cans because those are highly infinitely recyclable and can be used again and again for the same type of product. Okay, so we talked a lot about packaging. Let's move on to sustainable shipping, which is the next natural step. And we begin by asking the same question: what is sustainable shipping? Sustainable shipping are sustainable shipping practices that aim to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. So that is what would be considered sustainable, and this can be done by adopting cleaner fuels, improving your engine efficiencies, exploring alternative energy sources such as electric or hydrogen power, optimize systems and routes to reduce fuel consumption. So yeah, not just routes, but also optimizing your inventory management systems and creating routes in an effective way that reduces the amount of fuel that will be used for shipping, as well as efficient storage spaces and reusing shipping materials such as pallets or pallet wraps. And then finally, looking at zero or low emission last mile deliveries, because it turns out that that makes a huge impact. And we'll discuss more about that in the next slide. Yeah, so why choose sustainable options? In 2022, a shipping index found that the big 4 e-commerce shippers, so FedEx, UPS, USPS, and Amazon, delivered an average of almost 700 parcels every second. This is for United States. And so unsurprisingly, the transport and logistics account for about 30% of the total greenhouse emissions in the States. Just that statistic alone gives us an idea of how much of a positive impact we can make by adopting sustainable shipping practices. And of those CO2 emissions in the States, 40% of them were associated with last mile deliveries, which is the last mile delivery is basically the final leg of the supply chain. That's when goods are delivered from a local distribution center to the end consumer. And even though that's the shortest distance, but it is a much higher frequency and is affected by different factors such as packaging materials, the idling time of the vehicles, and traffic congestion. And finally, as we talked about in packaging, more Canadian adults are likely to trust and be loyal to a company that works to address these environmental issues. So that's another reason to choose to be sustainable. So how do we reduce the impact of shipping? Shipping starts with materials that you purchase for the production process of your business. So consider the origin of materials. Procuring materials from the closest source to you reduces the emissions associated with transporting those materials. Following the eco-friendly packaging and shipping material guidelines that we just talked about. Um, and then incentivizing green shipping and minimizing returns. So include options such as green checkout, which could look like providing best customers with an option to choose zero emission shipping. This is something that we see when we book our flights. There's an option for us to offset the carbon emissions associated with the flight. So the same principle can be applied to shipping your product. And then minimizing returns by including lots of detail about the products and have a sustainable return strategy such that customers can use the same package that they receive the product in to send it back. And use responsible courier service provider. Couriers are the only point of contact for customers when they shop online. So by choosing responsible couriers, you're also representing your brand image and reducing emissions. Okay, so that was sustainable packaging and shipping. Up next, we'll be delving into energy efficient operations, but we did go over a lot in the last 15 minutes. So if there's any questions anyone has, we can take the next couple of minutes. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. If not, we'll be moving on to the next part of the webinar.
Hi, Deep.
Hey, Keith.
With regards to the packaging, the secondary and tertiary packaging, and also the empty space in the packages and stuff like that, isn't that of utmost importance, not only sustainability speaking, but also fiscally? So are you still finding, as you're auditing, that this is an area to make improvements?
So secondary and tertiary packaging, when that is associated with recycling troubles that we have in BC. So when, for example, we have a member who sells tea and have an online platform where they sell tea. So they went from using an overwrap that goes around the tea box to just using the cardboard box itself. So that's kind of like an example of what I meant by eliminating tertiary packaging. So that, yeah, I don't think I fully understood your question. And Jared has his hand raised up here. So sorry.
I think I could hop in there for a sec. In the cases that I've seen there to be like a lot of unnecessary secondary and tertiary packaging, it's in a lot of cases just the fact that businesses haven't actually had the time to really stop, assess what they're doing because they've kind of just been doing it for so long. They have these systems in place, and that's just how they've been doing business. But it's really once they take the time to assess, they're like, oh, okay, why are we putting all this packaging on it? That they do kind of unveil the clear kind of economic benefits that are associated with that.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for hopping on, Jared. All right. So let's move on here to energy efficient operations. So, here in this part of the webinar, we'll explore ways to reduce your business's energy consumption and, whether that be through operational changes or new technology. So I thought it would be fun to start with a question before we delve into the technical stuff. What operations or appliances do you think draw the most energy in a small business? So please feel free to write down your answer in the chat. Whether you think it's a refrigerator or your hot water tank or something else. Let's give everyone 20 or 30 seconds to type in their answers. Cold room, HVAC. Okay, great answers. So yeah, we've got HVAC, which is yeah, both temperature related answers so far. Domestic hot water. Great. Okay. So these are definitely great answers and they apply to different kinds of businesses. And the answer can also range from one business type to another. Um, but statistically, these are the major energy draws for a small business. So yeah, whoever typed in HVAC, HVAC systems generally account for the largest portion at about 34 or 35% of the total energy consumption. And this draw can sometimes further be increased in older buildings, due to inefficient equipment or poor insulation. And then second, we've got lighting, which can make up to 30% of total energy use, usually overlooked, but relatively easy to upgrade. We've got kitchen and manufacturing equipment, about 20% of energy use. And based on the type of business, refrigeration can be a huge contributor to your total energy consumption, making up to 40% for some grocery stores or a food and beverage, or in the food and beverage industry. And finally, we have building operations and maintenance. Although this is not an active energy draw, it can passively increase your total energy consumption. Making small operational changes such as turning off your equipment when not in use, installing timers or sensors on lighting, regular HVAC maintenance can potentially reduce overall energy consumption by 10 to 30%. So that's why I have it on here. Okay, moving on to HVAC and cooling systems. A heat pump is a system that transfers heat from one place to another instead of generating it. And by this process, it can achieve efficiencies of up to 2 to 300%. So compare that with a traditional gas furnace, which operates at about 70 to sometimes 95% efficiency, and electrical heaters, which operate at 100% efficiencies, which convert fuel or electricity directly into heat. So the biggest benefit is reduced operational cost. You can save up to 30 to 60% on heating consumption, and this big increase in your energy savings reduces the return on investment time on a heat pump. And with their average lifespan of 15 to 30, 20 years, it lets you have a long period of net savings. So this example is just to show how far we've come in terms of our technology. So next up, lighting, which is the second biggest energy draw. Here's a little table that we made to compare the different lightings that we generally see when we go do site visits with businesses. Here we have T12s, or old and abandoned technology. Their average lifespan is about 5 years, and the annual operating cost of a T12 light bulb is about $27. Compare that with T8s or T5s, which are also tube lightings. They're the skinnier kinds, but they have about a 40% improvement in terms of efficiency. And finally, we have LEDs, which have a much longer lifespan and over 70% of improvement in terms of efficiency. So here's a simple breakdown, a simple cost analysis. So if any of the business was to switch 10 T12 lights with LEDs, they would save about $193 on annual operating costs. So that's that. And then BC Hydro has different rebates in place. These are for residential clients or even for businesses. I believe they provide funding to cover up to 25% of the upfront costs. Office and kitchen appliances. So when the time comes to upgrade to a new office or kitchen equipment, it is important to look at Energy Star standards. This is the easiest way to identify Energy Star equipment is by looking for the Energy Star sticker. And on average, Energy Star appliances are about 25% more energy efficient compared to standard options while being cost comparable. And Here's a link to the Energy Star website. You can use it to find products. The most common office and kitchen appliances can be looked up on there, and you can filter by brand, size, cost, and efficiency, and more. And finally, refrigeration. As I mentioned earlier, they can be huge, if not the biggest energy draw for businesses like grocery stores or food and beverage producers. So it is important to assess your refrigeration systems wisely, and do your own research. Consider size and usage, and don't buy an oversized refrigerator if you don't need one. If a standalone refrigerator is enough for your business operations, then use the same Energy Star product finder and select a good refrigeration system. And if you have a larger refrigeration system, the most important thing you can do is regular maintenance to keep leaks in check, proper insulation, and choosing a system that has low GWP. GWP stands for global warming potential, which is the metric that is used to compare the impact of different greenhouse gases on global warming relative to carbon dioxide. So there's refrigerants that have a GWP value of up to 3,000. So those are the ones we try to move away from. And there's many new options, such as CO2-based refrigeration systems, which have a global warming potential of less than of 1, or less than 5, or close to 1. Okay, so now that you have an idea as to what might be the biggest contributor to your total energy consumption, whether you looked around and found lots of T12 lights or anything else, I wanted to leave you with a few key considerations to help you decide what changes to make. So considering the energy standards. So for equipment, Energy Star is a great place to find the current standards, a lead for any building related equipment, considering the age and condition of your equipment, whether it's close to the end of its life, then investing in newer technology, looking at the maintenance and operational costs, available technology, and finally the environmental impact. So that was a lot of information that we just went over, and to put that into use, we have a small activity. So here we look at a small business that has found an inefficiency, and now they're trying to figure out the best course of action for them. And in this example, we will consider the heating system that the business uses and what difference operational changes will make versus changes that purchasing new equipment will make for them. Okay, so here we have 3 columns for 3 different scenarios, and I will use BC Hydro's appliance cost calculator to help this business make a decision here. So I'm gonna switch my screen sharing. Just give me 1 moment. Okay, I hope everyone can see the appliance cost calculator here. So this is a tool that you can find on the BC Hydro website, and it helps you kind of calculate the average cost of a few basic appliances. So for this example, we are looking at the heating system of this business, and we go and select electric baseboard heaters because they're one of the most commonly used electrical heating equipment. Set it to 1 month. Okay, so for the sake of this example, we are going to say that this business uses baseboard heaters and they have it running 24 hours a day. And for a 1,000 square foot of space, it would cost them about $374. And if they were to make an operational change here, and instead of keeping it running for the entire 24 hours, if they go down to 10 hours a day, so turning it off when the space is unoccupied, or turning it down rather, they save a whole bunch of money, and the cost goes down to $155 per month. Or another option for them is finding newer technology. So, for example, they choose to go use a heat pump instead of electric baseboard heaters. So, with the same amount of usage, 10 hours a day for a month, reducing their cost down to $32. So, that's a huge shift. And there's tools like this that are available online that will help you make a decision if, whether operational changes are enough for you right now, or if your equipment is old and going to be out of service soon, whether you should invest in newer technology instead. Okay. Okay, so moving back to the slides here. Okay, so with the information that we got from the calculator and doing some math, I filled out the rest of the table, and this is how the different options compare. So, if you were this business, which option would you choose? If you have an answer right now, feel free to put that in the chat. But looking at the amount of kilowatt hours of energy use, I also calculated the CO2 emissions associated with it. And here's kind of the breakdown. This would be the annual cost over 4 months of heating. This would be the annual cost if they turned down to heating for just 10 hours a day instead of 24 hours a day. And this is the annual cost if they were to switch to newer technology. So yeah, these are different scenarios, and using calculators, you can find something that works best for your own business. Right, and finally, I just wanted to touch upon the shareability of your actions. Here is an example of an environmental metric that we created for one of our members. So during site visits, we note down metrics such as the equipment and lighting used to calculate the savings that the member achieves through their actions. But this is something every business should be doing. So keep track of your metrics to know the financial benefits of your efforts, and also use it as something that you can share with customers to, again, build a strong brand recognition and align with environmental initiatives. Okay, that was the end of this portion of the webinar. Any questions? Okay. So moving on to the most exciting part of today's webinar, we have Melanie and Andrew from Locality Brewing joining us today to share their experience adopting a closed loop circular business model and leading the brewery industry, especially in terms of their water conservation practices and sourcing everything locally or from within their farm. So Melanie, I will let you take it from here. I'm going to stop screen sharing and give you the screen sharing capabilities here.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, so I can
Green.
share screen. Sharing is not turned on. Sending request.
Okay.
I think you have to accept it. Yeah, perfect. So do this desktop. Oh, because then I'll move this up here. And then, there we go.
Perfect.
Great. That's just a little video of
There's sunshine. There's sunshine. There's sunshine. I need to run. When the sun is out. Something I can laugh about. I feel good in a special way. I love it. Such a sunny day. Oh, there's sunshine. Oh, there's sunshine. Oh, there's sunshine. We take a walk, the sun is shining down. Birds my feet as they touch the ground.
So that's just a little video of a fresh hop collab we did. We're gonna start. I didn't know they'd do that. Yeah, so that was a fresh hop collab we did with ABC, another beer co. We grow barley, we grow hops here, we grow cider apples, we have honeybees, hazelnuts, and then we have Black Table Farms here that grows like market gardens. And am I missing anything? I feel like I am, but and then we malt on site, so we process on site and then have the brew house on site. So a lot of kind of like that vertically integrated farming. So we have a focus on the land. So sustainability is very important to us because it showcases what we do. It's pretty much everything. It's the field to glass experience that we have. So we want to take care of what we have around us, and we want people to also get an opportunity to see where the ingredients come from and connect to the land. This is a blackberry. We did a collab and we picked blackberries and used all ingredients from other farms. These are cider apples. And then that's our hazelnuts. Oh, did I say hazelnuts we have as well? That's a hazelnut beer. So I have Andrew here. He is an engineer and is passionate towards wastewater and recycling water. So he is going to kind of give a chat about the different things we do. So our sustainable water recycling program. And then we'll also talk about, I think you touched on the locality of different, for us, it's the locality reduces the amount of shipping. So there's a lot of conservation there. And then the permaculture farming practices. So go ahead, Andrew.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't have any slides with music. So I'll try and keep it short. So we really focused on that, trying to source everything as locally as possible. So 50% of the ingredients we use in the brewery are from the farm, and most of the ingredients are either from our neighbors or 90% plus from BC. I think we've purchased one pallet of grain from out of the province since we opened 3 years ago, and that was from another family farm who's got a local roaster, the closest one roasting operation to us here. So yeah, we try to do everything local, as Mel said, but we realized we were asking questions, and Jared's on the call. We sort of reached out because we were putting all this effort into trying to reduce that footprint and how far the ingredients travel, but we didn't know if that was where we could best use our time. So we reached out to Green Biz and Destination BC, had audits done, and that really helped us kind of focus, what else we could do. So yeah, and two of the significant undertakings that came out of that was, we want to just protect the natural resources and use as little as possible. So the first was water recycling. So there was about a $40,000 investment on our part, and we were successful in getting a grant thanks to some of these audits that we could use to justify why we're choosing to do certain things. We're a really little brewery. We do about I'll put it into tall cans or pints just so there's all these different measurements in different industries, but it's about 150,000 pints a year. We draw water from our aquifer below the farm that we operate on. And most breweries use 7 to 10 liters of water for every 1 liter of beer. So, that's one area that we thought, let's try and target this. We did start to see in some of those heat domes that we were getting differences in the quality of water that came out of our well. So it's immediate sort of impacts of why we need to be sustainable and why we need to conserve and use as less as possible. So we calculated 500 cubic meters of water that could probably be reused during those peak summer times when we're brewing the most, but also irrigating a lot of our crops. So what we're doing is redirecting, reprocessing the process wastewater, treating it, storing it, and then using it for irrigation for some of the crops. And so yeah, we adjust pH for adjusting dissolved oxygen levels, and yeah, so that's what we're waiting on one replacement level control system to get this running, but yeah, it's installed. All the irrigation lines are all run across the farm, so we're excited about that. And then one of the other significant ones we did, and we're going to continue on next year, is what seeds we're using to grow on our farm. We're obviously seeing changes in our climate. Farmers see it immediately, and it's very evident. We're starting to call the seasons rain on and rain off. There's not those sort of damp but not drowning conditions, and then it goes instantly to baking hot, not warm. So we miss those spring conditions, and some of our spring planting is really struggling lately. So we're working with KPU, Farm Folk, City Folk, Township of Langley. We're doing variety trials next year. So this is like 2025 project. We're looking at different varieties that grow in winter because they tend to get the jump on the weeds in spring. They also harvest, at some point we would have to probably start to irrigate our barley fields if we keep seeing some of the weather fluctuations that we've been seeing. But using a different variety that doesn't grow in the rest of Canada, it's too cold in the rest of Canada, but better suited to our environment, we also use significant less water, basically eliminate irrigation. So that's 2025 project. Some of the other ones we're also looking at, we do have an on-site malt house just to try and, most cereal grains are grown thousands of kilometers away, sent to a malt house to process, and then trucked again several thousand kilometers to a brewery. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of resources in BC. So we're also teaming up. There's not a lot of gluten-free grain grown and malted in BC. It all has to be trucked in from Colorado is probably the closest, I believe, 2,500 kilometers away. So we're also working with other BC businesses to sort of close some of those gaps. We can grow millet in BC, but there's nowhere to malt it. So we're working with other local small businesses to sort of fill some of those gaps to, again, reduce that transportation kind of demand. So yeah, that's basically what we've been working on, and thanks to the direction from some of these audits, we're sort of prioritizing water recycling, elimination. As we see climate change, we're starting to try and grow different crops so we don't need to irrigate, and then just finding products that aren't available to people and people have to order from far away, finding those products and connecting the dots. So.
Yeah. And then we also focus on permaculture farming techniques. So the idea of that is working with the land. We're fortunate to not have a flat, perfect farmland. So we were forced, but it's really been, it is what brings the beauty to the place, to work with a very topographically challenging piece of land. There's lots of water, there's lots of biodiversity. So we work with that. So for instance, we have our hazelnuts, and the voles at the first couple years would eat, so pretty much chew them right down, and you could pull them out. And it was about a 10% loss for the first couple years. But the coyotes would eat those voles. So that was beneficial having the coyotes there. However, the coyotes would eat a couple chickens once in a while. So it was kind of this cycle. You can't have it all. We could have gone and sprayed and taken measures and killed all the coyotes and done all this stuff, and but in the end you're then more susceptible to bigger infections and worse environmental issues later. So kind of in any given year, there's going to be some failures, but other crops are going to do better. So having that the diversity within our crops helps as well. Because in any given year, something like our hops will grow really well, or our fuggle that we use in our honey lager will do really well in a wetter season, and even another variety might not do as well, and on a different year that might change. And then we might have a good grain year, or the grain might not have a great year, but then we'll have a great hazelnut year. So kind of with the variation, it kind of eases the losses from it being just one giant wipeout. Also, Andrew talked about this, about utilizing local resources, and we do that from everything, even our deliveries. We use our little electric car. Again, we're very fortunate not to have such big orders that we can use our electric car. Well, we can change that. If anyone wants to order some kegs, we can then get an electric truck. And then sustainable, like, community engagement. So that's where we bring in the hop picking. People come out and engage with the farm, with the harvesting of the barley, and that connection to farming. Back in the day, people often participated in farming activities, whether or not they owned a farm, or they'd help their neighbors or their cousins or the farm around the corner. And that's kind of been separated. So we're trying to bring that back to people. And I think community engagement is what really makes people care more and really understand that beer is an agricultural product. You're talking, water is the main ingredient. That's why it's so important. Barley or grain, yeast, and then hops. So, and then you can add different stuff for fun, but those are all can be grown here. So it's very important. And yeah, so that's just kind of the conclusion there. We use the pond, showcase it a lot. We have the stage on the pond floating there. So we have live at the lagoon. Everything we do is kind of centered around
Connecting people
to the land. And the other part is we are a Métis-owned business, so we're trying to bring in indigenomics, so kind of looking at it as a full system rather than just as a capitalist system. I won't go into that right now, but you can read the book. Yeah. Any questions?
This is amazing. I feel like I learned so much, and I really, yeah, when Andrew was talking about farmers feel it first, the environmental change and the impacts of it, that really hit home for me. Like, that is so true. And you being able to see that happen right on your farm, like the effects of like the water shortages, and then making changes and incorporating sustainability through your lived experience, that is really something unique. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for Melanie and Andrew here?
Yes, I have a question regarding your spent grain. What do you do with it?
With the what?
Spent grain.
Oh, spent grain.
Yeah.
So it goes to our local dairy farmer who's about 5 kilometers down the road. So
yeah, it all gets reused. So for us, it's mainly the dairy farmer down the street. We also have someone that picks up some for their pigs, and then we have some people
treats.
Yeah,
Got
dog
treats in the front of house.
We have
too.
dog treats, and then we have people that come and take some for their gardens. So yeah, none of it even ends up in the compost. It's all used.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a question as well about the water storage, the water that gets recycled. You mentioned that you treat it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to keep that water recirculating, like a pump to keep things from settling? And the treatment that you do, keeping that properly diluted evenly throughout your storage vessel?
Yeah, so we have so when we launched, actually, I don't think Fraser Health didn't want us using recycled water, just in case somebody stuck their mouth on a sprinkler or something. But that's changed significantly in the last 2 years, and now they want us to do it. So we had a large rock pit to discharge after we treated for pH to land. So that's what we do all winter long still. It still goes through the treatment system, and then it'll discharge to land, and it's during those months where we need irrigation water that it's stored. So yeah, it'll be, a lot of we've got about 1,000 square meter picnic area around the lagoon. And we did that, so where we have the agritourism piece is in the non-farmable kind of regions of the farm. And then, so yeah, that's irrigation is sort of from May, depending on the year, through to September. So that's the water that's stored but used every day, versus the rock pit is sort of the winter usage. So we don't, we'll see what it is in 2025, what we can get the water from. An average of 7 to 10 liters per 1 liter of beer, is most breweries fall in that range. Can we push that down to 5 liters, on average across a year? So,
Thank you.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining and sharing your experiences, Melanie and Andrew. That was a really good learning opportunity for everyone. And I hope, even from the rest of the webinar, you found something useful. Assess your current shipping and packaging practices, assess your current operations and equipment, and take something, learn something from the experiences that Melanie and Andrew had to share. And feel free to reach out to us at bcgreenbusiness.ca. You can fill out our become a member form if you wanted to join the program, or just send us a message if you have any questions. But thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. And we hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.